Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, the Exponential Success Coach. And with me today, I have one of the most elite coaches I've ever met. He's amazing, working with athletes, actors, actresses, top performers from around the world. I was introduced to him when I got a chance to do some stage work and work on my stage craft. And he brought the physicality piece. Tim Adams has an amazing background and an amazing trajectory. And that's why I wanted to bring him to One Sharp Sword and to you. Tim, welcome to One Sharp Sword.
Thank you, Wayne. It's a joy to be on here. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, so it really is a pleasure to have you. I'm looking forward to working with you more, with getting to, beyond One Sharp Sword. Let's talk about you, your trajectory. You didn't wake up one day and go, I'm gonna be the physical trainer and mindset coach for the top performers. Yeah. Let's wind back the clock to little Tim.
Little Tim.
Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I was born in Indiana.
What part?
Lafayette, Indiana.
Okay.
The home of Purdue. If you're going to be very specific, it'd be West Lafayette, but I was born in Lafayette. Actually lived in a tiny little town south of Lafayette, called Linden. And if you were driving, I don't even know the road it's on, but if you were driving through it, you'd blink and you'd actually miss it because there was no stoplights at the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, it was, a place where I spent most of my time running through cornfields and exploring, like whatever was there. And I thought it was this huge, thriving, big city, but the reality was, it was probably all of 4 blocks big at the time. And my parents moved to Colorado when I was 9. So I say I grew up in Colorado. Colorado is kind of where my heart is, and I love Colorado. And spent middle school, high school, college in Colorado, and then was in the military. I went to the AirForce Academy and served for 13 years, had the opportunity to come back to the academy. And that's how I got into coaching. Well, actually, I got into coaching from I got recruited to play football. And I tore my ACL as specifically, I guess I would say I got recruited to play. I didn't have the test scores to get into the academy immediately. So I went to the prep school, and the prep school is on the academy proper. And so it's like a red shirt freshman year. So I go to the prep school, have a great season in football, excited to get up to the academy and go home for Christmas break, and went skiing with my buddies and tore my ACL. And my knee was never the same since, never has been the same since. And as a freshman, so I get into the academy and make it through the beginning of basic training. And in fact, I was, funny enough, the number 1 cadet going into what's called Jacks Valley out of our squadron. And the first 2 days, probably day 2 of Jacks Valley, I'm climbing a rope and the rope's wrapped around my knee, and I go to reach up and hit the bell, and my knee dislocates, my graft fails, and I slide down 20 feet, my hands are burning, I hit the ground, and my knee pops back in, and I'm just being attacked by all the cadre saying, Adams, what the F are you doing? What are you thinking? That's dangerous, that's dumb. I'm like, I didn't say anything, because I was just I'd heard a rumor that, if you have 2 surgeries on one joint at the academy, you get medically disqualified. And I'm like, this was my dream. And so I didn't say anything, and my knee blows up and I'm hobbling around, and people are kind of asking what's going on. And I went from being the number one cadet in my squadron to the bottom, absolute bottom of the squadron. And then now I'm the problem child because I'm not at the top, and they think I'm just coasting, and I'm doing everything I can just to, get through. And anyway, I get cut from the football team in the spring. I made it through the season, kind of practice every other day because my knee would just dislocate, and my knee got so bad.
Wow.
But I made it through, and my squadron was it was called Attrition 26, and they tried to get rid of all the freshmen that they could, and they hated athletes, and I was one of just a handful of athletes in the squadron. And so when I got cut, I get thrown back into the squadron, and it was just like I didn't sleep for probably a couple months. It was pretty bad, but I made it through, and got to the point where I was asking my strength coach, because I was pretty good in the weight room. I was like, hey, any chance you want any help as a student coach? And they're like, well, we've never had one, but let's see what we can do. And they came up with letting me do that. So I became a student coach.
That's gutsy, right?
Yeah.
In the military to think outside and that's gutsy. Good for you.
It was self-preservation. but I loved it. And I was just naturally enjoyed it. And it was something that I started really doing, but not necessarily taking seriously at that moment. And then I started as a cadet, I started competing and got pretty good at Olympic lifting, and started going down to the Olympic Training Center and learning from Dragomir, Ciceron. And what I found, and I learned this in high school, was when you learn from the best, it accelerates your learning. And so every time I wanted to learn something, I wouldn't just go to the guy down the street or, go to whoever. I went to the guy who either developed the technique or the guy who was creating world champions or Olympic medalists. And the funny thing about it is, like, it just took years off my coaching. Yeah. And I was able to accelerate my when I say take years off, like I went from, and I'll just share this, like when I finally went back to the academy to coach. So I went off into the military. I was stationed in Ohio. I bought aircraft for the Air Force. And I was married at the time, and I was helping my ex. She was a Division I athlete, and I was kind of helping her team do some movement stuff. And the reality was I didn't really know much about movement, but I was just doing stuff and the stuff that I had been doing. And I just started kind of playing around with it. But when I got the opportunity to come back to the academy and actually coach, I ended up getting a master's in exercise science and really kind of going all in on it. And the beautiful piece of that is, like, I'm coaching all day long. I'm teaching up on the academic side. I was a adjunct business professor, and I helped out in the biology department with the exercise physiology. And so I was kind of in this space where I was teaching physical education classes, and then I was volunteering as a coach because I got hired as a PE coach or a PE teacher is what I was. I was in the physical education department. But I parlayed that into helping the intercollegiate team because I was good in the weight room. And then I started, like, the guys that I was helping, they started getting like I took a kid from, and this may or may not mean anything to anybody, but in like a month's time, one of our kids was cleaning 360 pounds, and I took him up to where he's cleaning over 400 pounds. And in that very short period of time, the head strength coach was like, okay, we really need to create a position for you. And so they did. And then I moved in to be an action assistant coach at the academy. And anyway, the point being about learning from the best. So this was really pivotal for my learning and my growth, because when I wanted to learn speed, it's May of '98. I got a non-volunteer assignment, and I had to leave the Air Force because I didn't want to move to LA to buy missiles. I'm like, I need to expand my ability. Instead of just being in the weight room, I need to learn about speed. And so I was like, I don't know anything about speed. And the fastest guy in the world at the time was a guy named Ben Johnson. And his coach was a guy named Charlie Francis. And I didn't know Charlie Francis, but I knew a guy who knew a guy. And in a week, I'm sitting in front of Charlie Francis. And in that time frame, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like there's actually a science and an art to speed. And so like my mind was blown, and I start taking all his concepts, and I come back and I'm using it with my guys, and they're getting better, but not exceptionally better. And then in the summer, so that was May of '98, and then like June, July timeframe, I think it was July timeframe, a kid named Obadiah Thompson breaks the world record, and his coach was a guy named Dan Path, and he coached for the University of Texas. And this was pre-internet. Like you have to understand, this was like 1998. And the internet was just kind of coming out, right? Like you couldn't find people. You actually had to go to a microfilm and research people at that point in time. And so the research was just a little different back then. And so I find out Dan Path's coaching for University of Texas. And in August, we had an all-comers track meet at the AirForce Academy. And I had since separated from the academy, but I was going down helping out academy kids that wanted to kind of be in the NFL. And we were doing this training, and I look out at the track, and there's a guy with a Longhorn t-shirt on, and I'm like, oh, hold on, guys, I gotta go find Dan Path. So I run over to this guy and I go, where's Dan Path? And he's going, why? And I'm like, well, you see those kids in the corner? I'm doing their speed work, and they, I need help. And he goes, oh yeah, definitely. And I go, so where's Dan? And he goes, well, you're talking to him. So we hit it off, and he goes,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy, right? It's serendipitous for sure. And he goes, come down to Houston next week. I'm going to introduce you to Tom Tellez. And Tom Tellez was Carl Lewis's coach. So in 1988 Olympics in Seoul, Ben Johnson won the gold medal. He was coached by Charlie Francis. Carl Lewis was coached by Tom Tellez. And the other two guys that were bronze and then ultimately the fourth place finisher became a bronze finisher, were coached by Dan Path. So in a 3-month period of time, I was learning from the top 3 speed coaches in the world of all time. Like these guys are like the godfathers of speed training. And so that's,
just pause for a second, because they just let you hang with them.
So like, again, remember this is 1998, and I'm in a place where I have this curiosity about everything, and I'm always asking questions, and I have this exuberance of wanting to learn, and I just brought that to the table. And so I was just asking questions like, hey, can I come spend time with you? I know nothing about speed, and you're the best in the world. Can I spend time with you? And I don't, it doesn't work with everybody, but you would be surprised at how many people, if you just ask, how open they are to share. And I do that. If there's an expert that I want to learn from, like I'm actually at a speaking event today, and there's a guy in the room that I'm like, I need to learn from him. So I went up to him, and he was like, absolutely. And he gave me some great nuggets. Like, and it's just that, I think, mentality that when someone's curious, I think people are really open to sharing. I know I am. Like I share when people ask me questions, I share uninhibitedly. Like I've had my competitors come to me and ask me, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'll tell them. And the reason I do is because I know that because of my curiosity and because of my drive, that I'm constantly learning, and that whatever I give them, and I don't hold back. I share everything. Like it's not like this place of like, oh, I can only give you so much. It's like, this is what I'm doing, because I know that by the time they figure out how to implement it themselves, I'm already going to be 5 years ahead of them from all the other stuff I'm learning. And so, like,
I think this is a really key point. I think that this is something that you and I share, that our paths in some ways have been similar, and that when we learn, we seek the highest level of learning, and that makes us operate at the highest level possible. And I think that the other piece is, so many people are afraid of sharing their content. They'll hold on to it, and it's like, look, you use the word competitor, and I actually don't even use that word anymore.
Thank you.
You know, it's like there's you.
Yeah.
Nobody can be Tim Adams.
Nobody can, right?
Right. Nobody can be me. Nobody can be you.
We may talk about the exact same things, but because you have different experiences from my experiences, you're going to solve the problem completely differently than how I would solve the problem. And people are going to be attracted to you, not me. And like, to me, that's like, I was just on another podcast last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I think. And I was sharing, like, I've made a living off of an industry that only has 1,500 people in it.
Yeah.
For 30 years. I've, like, talk about hyper niched. Like the NFL, there's only there's more now after COVID, but at the time there was 1,500 NFL players. I built a whole career off of that. And so when you want to talk about cutthroat dog eat dog world, like, I never felt competitive with anybody in my field, not with, the Athletes Performance Exos group, not with anybody else in my world. It was just like, hey, you got who they're attracted to you. I know what I can do. And even when my clients, and this is the funny piece, when they were like, well, what do you think of this guy? I'm like, I think you should go try him. Like, go work with them. Like, I want you to see the difference, because I know that you go work with them, you're going to come back to me.
Can I I didn't ask you ahead of our recording this. Can I share the idea that you and I had?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
So because, we're bouncing around ideas, and Tim and I are going to create a program called the Exponential Success Experiment. Yeah. And we are inviting people in to a high performance. It's going to be 2 to 3 days, and it's going to be everything from physicality to your mind state. Yeah. And you will up level. And it's because Tim and I have such kind of synergy, and we come at things so operationally differently.
So different.
That we thought that we'd just have some fun in the room together. And it's like, do this with your body, do this with your mind. Like, how are you coming at this? And that's
synergistic the opposite approach will be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Complementary, synergistic. Yeah. So amazing. So amazing. And it's one of the reasons why, it just kind of came to be, which means that it's got to be right. It's like, it was so organic. So I wanted to share that because our paths have been so parallel and yet so different, right? So different. And yet to approach the human as, oh man, there's more. There is so much more. Let's go. So this is awesome. So you're working now with bring us from May of 98 up to current day. Just fast forward a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I've been very blessed to coach in the NFL, coach in the NHL, to have lost everything. And in losing everything, I found me. And I'm not going to go into
just pause for a second. You don't go, hey, I was at the top of my game and lost everything.
Yeah.
Just a hint at what turned your life upside down. Because when my life turned upside down, I think a lot of the highest performers do have a sequence of, wow, I realized I wasn't living into my potential.
Yeah.
I realized that I made some choices in my life that were holding me back.
Yeah.
And I actually don't like my life right now. Something's got to change.
I wish it was that pretty.
It's never that pretty, but that's sort of the sequence.
That really was. So, look, go back to Indiana. I'm banging my head against the wall to get my parents' attention because they worked, and my dad was a teacher. My mom was an administrator, an administrative assistant. And it's not like we had money. We came from the wrong side of the tracks. And my dad is worked his ass off. He passed away in 2019. And but I had this lack, and I took that lack and it kind of was my fuel to learn so that I could be so needed by my clients that they appreciated me, that they needed me, and so everything I did was purely to try to get that recognition from them. And it drove me to be really good at what I do. And people may say that, well, that's really fucked up. Excuse me. That's really messed up. And it is. And yet it's me. It was me. And I liken this to an airplane trip that, at 5 years old, I go off on this trip and my navigation is just off and I just never course correct. And next thing you know, I think I'm flying to New York, but I end up in Miami and I end up in a place where wrong is right, right is wrong. And I make these decisions in my life where, based on this lack and my desire to be needed by other people, I find myself in an affair. And that affair destroyed my whole ecosystem. And rightfully so. I was not in a place where I was making good decisions, but it destroyed my ability to make money. It destroyed my ability to have a family. It destroyed my friends. They disappeared overnight. And I found myself curled up in a ball thinking that I was not going to make it to tomorrow. And by opening this door to this darkness that I had in me, that I didn't want to address, that I didn't want to recognize, the course correction from Miami to New York at 46 years old, having, I've had all this success, but I was like this shell of a man. And by going in and having to make that course correction, it was massively painful. The course correction immediately would have been less painful, but I waited 46 years for this correction. And it was the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me because I found me.
That's awesome.
For the first time, I understood what being congruent meant, what being in integrity meant, what being in alignment meant, because I'd been out of alignment my entire life.
That's going to be, that is all part of the exponential success experiment.
Exactly.
Seriously. Because here, a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, has, you were 5 when you sort of realized all this or incorporated.
Right.
Most kids will have verbal abilities, and it's right around 7 that they're integrating the rules of the world without a world perspective, which means that as adults, they're operating from the rules of a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old. And it's not until your 40s that you go, oh my God, I could actually have a different life.
Yeah.
And am I still potent? Am I still, vital?
Yeah.
Can I be different in the world? And you make these choices that seem like, what the heck are you doing? And at the same time, what happens is your whole world gets shaken up, right? You know, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I didn't need to do that in order to find me, but holy cow, everything else fell away. If everything else fell away, who am I?
Yeah.
That, by the way, is the existential dilemma, and that's my sweet spot. So that's
that's the beauty of what we're creating, right? And that's the piece of I Peter Panned for 46 years. And
a lot of guys do.
And I wasn't taking responsibility for anything, right? And so this is that piece of you can learn from pain or you can learn from wisdom. And we're coming together to really create this opportunity to say, hey, look, there's some wisdom in approaching things from a different perspective and addressing some things today so that you don't have to keep going down this path that's going to lead to destruction. You can get your lesson today instead of having to get it tomorrow.
Yeah. And if you've already had the destruction, look, there are ways of rebuilding that allow you to rebuild so that your trajectory is amazing. So that's awesome.
You know you are bigger than the life you are leading. It really is time to attend to that thing you've wanted to do or have, but you've been putting off. It's time to step into that dream you've parked for someday. It's time to claim true well-being, both personally and professionally, without giving up the success that got you here. It's time to check out Dr. Pernell's signature small group retreat, the Exponential Success Summit. Explore exponentialsuccesssummit.com. Seats are extremely limited as this is a very special small group event. www.exponentialsuccesssummit.com.
What are you doing these days? Like your client base and
that's a great question. So I'm in this process where I have been, I'm still working with pro athletes, still fortunate to have my hand in that world. And I love it. And it keeps me the demand of pro sports keeps me on my toes because the turnaround is so quick, right? Like the people think NFL's got 6 days to recover from a game, but the reality is they really only have 3 days because they have to be able to practice on Wednesday in order to play on Sunday. So that's good. In the NHL, we have less than 24 hours to get guys ready to play. So that speed really refines my skill set. The thing I started doing about 12 years ago is I started speaking and I started getting into the corporate world and working with executives, entrepreneurs, founders, and these high achievers that were looking for more. And when I say more, it doesn't necessarily mean more money. Most of them are looking for more impact. And what's happened over the course of the last 12 years for me is since my, what I would call implosion and awakening, I've really gotten to this place where I'm doing way more self-exploration with my clients and deeper work than I did before. So what used to be mechanical is way more integrative than it's ever been. And I was super integrative before, collectively in the holistic performance perspective, but now I take a much more holistic approach on the internal self perspective, if you would. And so I would say that, I'm doing more somatic emotional work. I'm doing more mindset work. I'm doing more self exploration and self discovery work. And what I call it is I help you unburden you so that you can be the best version of you, so that you can go do what you're called to do in a way that helps you build your business or your family or your relationships or your community in a way that you couldn't do otherwise.
See, I call that listening to the whispers.
Oh, I love that.
One of the high performers that I worked with, you talk about more, right? And one of the high performers I worked with, all he wanted to do, like he was successful. He had a great business. He was the business owner. He was, he had everything except he didn't have a big green egg barbecue. All he wanted to do was just to be able to relax.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you talk about more, sometimes more is to cut away the distraction of that stuff that, of the supposed to. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to do that. You're supposed to then grow and climb. And it's like sometimes more is actually, I want more peace. Right. I want to find more of me.
Exactly. And when you find more of you, you realize that what you're chasing is not you.
Exactly.
It's a pattern. It's a story. It's
the old stories from that you've integrated from all the supposed tos. If you hear those supposed tos in your head, it's not you. If you hear the I wants, that's probably you. I want, I desire. Yeah. And a lot of people don't dare to desire. And that's been my work. And it sounds like, you're opening from a different direction. Yeah. Fabulous.
And I love that too, Wayne, because, and I love how you frame that, because like, there's this piece of, and I call it calling. Like right now, I'm really big on helping my clients understand, like, are you being called to this? Like, that's one of the questions I ask is like, you know, why is it that you want this? Like, because I believe that when you have a calling,
yeah,
and you
my question for my clients is, do you feel like you're being pushed, or do you feel like someone is pulling you from your heart? Like, are you being pulled toward this?
Yeah.
Are you being pushed at this? And if so, that's probably someone else's story that tells you the supposed to's.
Brilliant.
Or are you feeling like you're being pulled, and it's usually being pulled from your heart?
So good. And see, now this is why I think, and I hope the people that are listening to this can see the synergy of this, is that like how we're talking about the same thing, but we're using different terminology, and that different perspective, I think is just so valuable.
It is. Yeah.
And it reaches so many more people from that perspective to help them understand where they are and where they can be. And again, when you're in alignment with who you are, and you are being pulled to that, you know, greater purpose that you were brought here to serve, then like it's unstoppable though when you're in that space, and when you align that, and it's like, and then you can start to make decisions that like, oh, I don't need to do that anymore, because that's not there's no should left.
You start to filter for what's in and what's out. I call it, that's the nature of the significance factor.
Beautiful.
Right. So that's significance. Are you making a difference because that's the legacy that you want to step into, you want to create, you want to leave for someone else to experience? Or are you making a difference because, hey, there's a paycheck involved? You know, it's like, you could do both. It's possible to have both. Like, you and I are both super passionate. That comes through, I think, about what we do. We lift others so that they can lift others. And I think that there's a passion behind that. And that is actually, that's the calling. That's what's pulling both of us, is to lift as you lead. You know, that's what's cool.
Yeah.
So this is awesome. You're, that's amazing. I appreciate the somatic emotional piece. Is magical, by the way, when you can feel what's in your body and give words to it.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, like, it's ironically, this is so interesting. I had a session last night with a participant here at this event, and did something that I've walked people through things before, but this instance was something that I'd never done, and I did it completely hands off. And the transformation that occurred was remarkable. Like, she couldn't believe how the trauma lifted. And this was a lot of sexual trauma that had been in her life for many years. And just by being able to navigate through this realm, hold the space for her to really meet herself in that space and recognize it, accept it, work through it, and then be able to let it go. It was remarkable, the shift. And what was the most exciting thing for me was I didn't have to use my hands for it, which was really a really exciting thing for me, because it's what I'm stepping into, is being able to do this without me having to help you get the feedback. And this is really critical. And this is something, Wayne, that I'd love to have a conversation deeper on, is the epidemic of lack of awareness or a disassociation that people have from their body. And they, I think, through pain, through trauma, they disconnect, and they just can't relate, and they're not getting the message. They're not getting what's there for them. And
I'd like to introduce the concept of micro trauma at this point.
Yeah.
Where it's not just like, boom, a traumatic effect happens, and now psychologically you must cut off from that event, or you will keep reliving it, and somehow you've cut off a part of yourself. I think the micro trauma that pretty much 100% of us experience is we log on to the internet.
Yeah.
And we are inundated with information, and we become numb to this matters, this doesn't matter. And so everything matters at some level, and it is like an assault.
Yeah.
And so we end up with this barrier. And when you recognize that it's like, no, this, it's like I will read the news, I won't watch the news. And I'll recognize, wow, this is written in kind of an inflammatory way. So I guess I'm done reading this. Next, right? And you start to sort out what you let in.
Yeah. And that's a survival mechanism. And I really want to say thank you for sharing that, because that micro trauma which really impacts your attention acquisition, right?
Yes.
It's a survival mechanism. And thank you for bringing that up, because that is, for everybody listening, I think it's really important distinction, because where in your life do you have to get to chaos? Do you have to get to like that red light flashing before you pay attention to what's going on? Why are our children screaming and begging for attention and, creating chaos? It's because we're not paying attention to them. We're not giving them the attention that they need, right? And whereas that our body is doing the same thing, our environment is doing the same thing, and we're just filtering it out.
It's amazing. I'm pretty sure you have this in your vision or values as well. I have 11 core values for myself and my business. I'm like they're one, and one of the values is love.
Yes,
and it's like I should say that one word differently. One of the values is love. Right? It's love. It's the I do dare to pay attention to others. It's like that's the piece that we can bring and remind people of, is that we got lost in the screaming. As a society, as a global society, I think we got lost in the screaming. And it's really like, how do you love yourself again?
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
How do you then expand that to have the impact, to have the significance, to create the legacy that you actually really, really want?
Yeah. And look, and you're nailing it right on the head, because like I talk about this concept, like you have to lead you before you can lead anybody else.
Yeah.
Only way you can lead you is to start paying attention to you. Like you have to start putting your focus back on yourself. Like, what is your body telling you? What, like you eat something and you get indigestion. Well, why? What's the feedback that you're getting from that? Your knee hurts. Why are you ignoring it? Like there's, you're tired, but you're having another cup of coffee. Like, when are you going to start listening to what your body is saying? Because like, it's one thing to be empathic to somebody else, but if you don't have anything left in your tank to be able to support that, well, you're not doing them a service.
You want my saying for that?
Yes, please.
You can't give what you don't have.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that happens at two levels. One is if you're running on fumes, you have nothing left to give someone else. That's one. Yeah. The other is if you're operating at a low level, you can't give from a higher level. And so continuing to learn, continuing to grow, that's the other part of that, is that listen to your body, get that feedback. If you're craving sugar, caffeine, carbs at night, there's a reason. And that's personal, by the way. I will share that it's like, I know that about me. It's like, oh, craving carbs, craving sugar. Just one more something. Like it's time for water and it's time for bed.
Yeah.
But the other part of that is like, so that's where I know I'm no good if I've just traveled and, I'm jet lagged or whatever. I take time. I build time in to my travels to be able to recover before I am engaging with others.
Yeah.
The other is I do up level my learning. I do stay ahead of the curve. I do have conversations like this, build with other high performers so that I can give it a higher level. And I encourage our audience to do that too. As you're listening to this, it's like, how do you grow yourself so that you can give more significantly?
And like, I think that is so spot on. And like, there's this concept of self-care out there right now. And I think self-care is it's required. It's a necessity for what then I call self-fortification, that growth component. How do you become more resilient? Now, how do you create more margin? How do you create that space so that you can grow, so that you can expand your capacity to work, to do things, to understand what's in front of you? Like it's I think a piece of our society right now that is caught up in the hacking mentality. Let me put a Band-Aid on it. Let me chase this or chase that. And we lose sight of, well, you might be able to create some success, but is it enduring? Does it have longevity? Is it sustainable? And the reality is, if you're putting Band-Aids on top of one thing on top of another, it's going to fail.
And there's a difference between a Band-Aid and a proven shortcut.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you and I offer are like, here's the path. You don't have to listen to the distraction. Here's how to get to that next level. And it's not like there are no shortcuts. Hacks are, it's like there are shortcuts.
There are.
But it's not, I need the shortcut in order to, it's more like, I will take this path. It might be a steeper path. Yeah. There might be work involved. Awesome. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. And the funny, the thing about that, Wayne, that I think is fascinating is that like there's almost this aversion to the right work. And it's like, I think people really truly know what needs to be done. They're just like, I don't want that option. Give me another option and I'll take that. Because the reality is, when you do the right work, it actually is a shortcut.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. When you do, that's like the quote of the day. It's like, when you do the right work, it actually is a shortcut. I love that. All right. I've got a challenge for you. You ready?
Challenge. Uh-oh. I hope so.
It's really easy.
All right.
If you were to challenge our audience to do like something, what would be the top 1 to 3 things you would tell them right now?
Yeah, the first thing I would challenge you to do is stop, take a pause, and drop from your head back into your body. You can drop to your heart, but I want you to drop to your body. And I want you to just listen. Because your body's screaming, I guarantee it. Like, I know it's screaming. So that's first and foremost.
Can I offer something here?
Please.
Fritz Perls, the founder of Gestalt psychology, had this great quote. Do you know what it is?
No, I don't.
Okay. He said, "Lose your mind and come to your senses." I love that.
I do too.
Right? It's like, So this was from the late 50s, early 60s. Like, that's
so much wisdom in that statement.
Right? Lose your mind and come. And like chapter 1 of my very first book is called Stop Thinking. And it's exactly that. Like, stop, listen, just.
Thank you. My gosh. So then the second piece that I would recommend is walk. Just go for a walk. And when I say go for a walk, get outside. I don't care if it's raining. I don't care if it's snowing. I don't care if it's blistering heat. Go outside and then listen.
Yeah. And look.
And look. This
Yeah,
is what
change your visual field, right?
Yep.
Breathe the air.
Auditory.
Watch the grass grow.
Olfactory, your body, the sense, like that's come to your senses, like
Go taste the tree. Yeah.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I think that is one of the most undervalued and underappreciated things that we can do, and get outside and go for a walk. And
it's so funny, Tim, because the science actually supports that. And I had somebody commented on one of my YouTube shorts. It's like, what's the research to back this up? I do not have the citations in front of me. That said, you can do some research and look, the science supports break, get outside, get away from your tech, even 3 to 10 minutes. It doesn't take much. Get outside, put your feet on the grass, breathe the air. Yeah.
Grass. I love grass. I love the sand. If you're
sand,
ocean. But if
I grew up near the ocean, it's like, oh yeah.
Cool. But even if you're not, like, just getting outside, regardless, is so beneficial. But the movement. Yeah. So there's so much going on here, and you brought up it, like the sensory mechanism, and then the locomotion. And there's something about letting your body move, and I hate to say it, the probably dropping back into the body and then going for a walk is forcing you to start to become more aware of where do you have limitations?
Yeah.
Where do you have tension? Where are you not interacting with the ground?
I'm gonna add something to number 2 of your challenge. Number 1, stop, just listen.
Yeah.
Number 2, get outside, walk, get outside. I'm going to add something to this, and it's a challenge that I used to give I used to run believe it or not, I know it's going to be a shocker for you, Tim. I used to run a sense-oriented program.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things that I did with that program was I would ask people to walk to their next event, whether that was lunch or their next meeting, and just walk 10% slower.
Yes.
And it's like, most people can't do 10%. They'll do 50%. They'll do 80%. And by asking for 10% slower. So I'm going to add that to your challenge.
I love that.
10% slower, more slowly. It will actually put you in touch with your body. Like, what is 10%?
So that right there. So wait, now this is so beautiful, because it's so good. It's like you're reading my mind. The third thing is, which leads into what you just said, is you connect with your body, connect with nature, and connect with someone else. And so this piece of connection is, we actually have to learn, at least, I don't want to speak for everybody. I know for me in my journey, the one thing that helped me the most was reconnecting with me, reconnecting with nature, and then reconnecting with humans. And this piece of reconnecting with humans, I could not have done it without connecting with myself first.
Yeah. Cool. I use, this is going to be so good. The exponential success experiment is going to be so good, because this is how we build on each other. I use, when you connect with someone else, I did a whole talk about, it was my Oxford talk. I did a whole talk about the difference between, hey, how are you, to, hey, I see you.
Yes.
I see you, dear human. And I talk about the ESN method, which is eye contact. Eye contact. When was the last time you actually connected with somebody enough to recognize their eye color? And all it takes is 2 seconds, like 2 beats, not even 2 full seconds, 2 beats of being deliberate and noticing somebody's eye color. And then the S is smile, because all the social psychology studies talk about how contagious that is, and that there's facial mimicry. So when you're smiling, you actually create that as a desired response in the other person. And then the N is use their name. Like, if you know their name, even if like you're talking to a clerk and they have a name tag on, Use their name, right? Eye contact, smile, name. So connect with your body, connect with nature, connect with someone else.
Yeah.
And use the ESN method if you want. 1, stop and listen. 2, walk, get outside, move. Locomotion is a great word. Sense, just get the sense. Fritz Perls, lose your mind and come to your senses. Connect with your body. When you're locomoting, when you're moving, do it 10% more slowly and just feel what that feels like. Get out in nature and then connect with someone else. Love it. All right, Tim, if people want to contact you, I think most people know how to contact me. I'll be putting up a website for Exponential Success Experiment, but they can contact you or me about that and or about anything. How do people find you?
Yeah, so you could do it through social media. I'm on Instagram, Coach Tim Adams, or I guess it would be hashtag Coach Tim Adams or at Coach Tim Adams, whichever it is. I'm not a big social media guy, but I am building out Instagram. My website is coachtimadams.com, and you can certainly send me an email through support@coachtimadams.com.
Cool. So the key here is Tim Adams, and it's as it sounds. There's no extra letters. It's TIMADAMS, coachtimadams.com. And then if you wanted to do a direct email, support@coachtimadams.com. Cool. We covered so much in such a short amount of time, and there's so much more
to cover.
Yeah. I'm smiling so big right now, Tim. This is like, oh my gosh, the what we're creating. It just is like, I have energy around it, and then I talk to you again, and I'm like,
yep,
we must, right? We must. Cool.
Yeah.
So this is awesome. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just want to say one last thing.
Yes.
For anybody out there that is going through a transition, that might be struggling, that
it's 100% of people going through a transition.
Well, yes, but are they aware enough that they are and would love to explore with Wayne and myself, getting the two completely different angles on probably the same issue that's going to help accelerate you towards finding you, getting to the root of what's going on so that you can actually be more of you, so that you can actually fulfill on what you're here to fulfill on, then you reach out to us, because we would love to assist you on that journey.
Absolutely right. Thank you for saying that. It's about leveraging into purpose, really. So thanks for saying that. Yeah, get in touch with either one of us. We are both here.
Yes.
And Tim, again, it's a pleasure. It really is a pleasure to have you here. So thank you.
Thank you. All right.
My guest, Tim Adams, the amazing Coach Tim Adams. And this is One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, the Exponential Success Coach. We'll see you here next time. Thank you.